here is a video just for the Activity 4 section. This is kind of the part where you are now just practicing. There are some more complex questions in here, some slightly different ones, but so I'm going to just show you some of the tricks and so forth. Yeah, so from there, I hope that after this day's lesson that you'll be good to go, confident with factoring, and just able to move on to the new stuff. Okay, so we'll start with A here. Right away, it does look different from what we've seen before. We have a letter on the C term, but again, we're just just kind of carry it along. You'll be fine. This is kind of where decomposition method is an advantage to being able to do that method. Will help. Okay, but you can get to the guess and check as well. All right, so just start off just doing what you've always done. Look for the GCF. Okay, always be checking. Is there a number I can divide out everybody? No. Is there a letter? No, because all three have to have the same. So really the only thing that you can divide out is a 1. So from there, what you're going to do is the product sum table. Okay, and I don't know if you can hear the fan on my computer. I'm just compiling a video, and this is what, yeah, anyway. For some reason the fan starts going when it does that. So okay, so we need a sum. Wow, it's getting better. We need a sum of -6, and we need a product of -7. Okay, so again, thinking what are all the numbers that make 7? Well, only these two, and from there, so we need to tweak the negative signs here. So we need a product of -7. So one of these has to be negative. So it's either this combination or it is this combination. Okay, so add them up and you will find that it is this one here. Okay, so that 1 plus -7 is going to get us to the -6. All right, so from there, what did we do? We always decompose the middle term. So we'll write w squared. Okay, and then we'll go plus 1. Okay, so remember how it was always just like one letter here, x, or so we'd write 1x, right? And then -7x. But here, I know there's 2 letters, so just write them both. Okay, so if it helps, you can go 1 wy, and then you can go -wy, okay, because you're decomposing that middle term, and then just carry the last C term along, okay? All right, so I'm going to separate these here. Okay, so from there, we would always use decomposition next. Okay, so I would take the first 2 terms and look for a common factor. So I'm saying a w works. And then the next term, I'm seeing okay, so I'm seeing a negative. So I want to get a negative. They both have 7 and they both have a y, okay? So really it's still, you're doing the same thing still. I know there's more letters that you have to pay attention to, but it's still the same steps. Okay, all right, so from there, divide the w's out. So sorry, write the greatest common factor first and then divide the w's out. You get 1 w left, and then here, when you divide, here the w's will be gone and a y will be left. Okay, w's not that great. Ooh. Okay, and then this one here, -7y comes out, and that leaves. The -7s will cancel out, the y's will cancel out, a w is left, and then, oh, negative makes positive. The 7s are gone, so one of the y's are left. Okay, and then we're getting to our final answer here. Okay, so the y, w plus y is factored out, and that leaves a W subtract 7y. Okay, let's get to the next one, B. So, actually, let's do a different color here. GCF. Okay, so right away, can also pay attention, all right, this is an A equals 1, so I could potentially use that little shortcut method if I can get to the factors, okay? Greatest common factor, okay, I'm seeing only a 1 would work here, so let's do our product sum. I need to add to 3. I need to get there by multiplying some values to make positive 5, okay? All right, so again, maybe in your head you're thinking, okay, 1 and 5, all right, nothing else works. If I add 5, will I get 3? No. If I subtract 1 and 5, will I get 3? No. This does not work. We can't think of any other factors for 5. These are the only ones, okay? Nothing works here. So if you know you've checked everything that's possible, you know you checked the GCF first, you checked the product sum, nothing will work, right? So for now, you're going to write cannot be factored. Okay, and that will happen sometimes. But you got to make sure you checked everything. It can't be like, yeah, sometimes you forget some factors and it actually can be factored. So you have to be careful before you state this, okay? And again, if you're doing it, I don't know, 5, 6 times all the way down the page, something's wrong. I'm not going to give you that many cannot be factored, okay? So at the most, it'll be 2 on a test or assignment. So just make sure that you're checking every possible answer before making that statement. All right, next one. Let's go to C. Okay, so we have Y's here, but it looks like just a typical one that we've been already studying, so hopefully not too bad. But yeah, just be able to factor in any kind of letter that's thrown at you, okay? All right, I can see that only a 1 will be divided out, so going to add to 1, but get there by multiplying some numbers to make negative 52, all right? So let's go through here, and if you're like, I don't even know what divides out of 52, so just, okay, start with 1 and 52. Could I add or subtract those to get a 1? No. Okay. How about 2 and 26? Okay, that's not going to work either. So keep going. Does 3 work? Nope. 4. 4 and 13. I can't tweak those to make a 1. That's not my possible factor. Those are not the possible factors. 5 doesn't work. 6 doesn't work. 7, nope. 8, nope. 9, 10 won't work. 11 won't work. Okay, 12 won't work. 13, yes, 13 will work. Oh, but you know what? We already picked 4 and 13. Okay, so we've checked every possible combination here, right? And none of them will add to make 1. So here's another one that cannot be factored. Okay, so you've used up your 2 cannot be factored cards. So assume everything else is going to be able to be factored. Okay, so just yeah, if something's not working, you got to keep trying to throw everything at it so that you can get it factored. All right, let's go to D. So analyzing it, oh, there's another one with 2 letters. It's okay, you can handle it. You got this. Okay, so again, GCF. All right, double check. Okay, no numbers work. Okay, they got lots of letters, but they don't all 3 of them don't have the same letter. Okay, so only a 1 would work. All right, so the usual. Find the sum of negative 9. Find the product of negative 36. Okay, And all right, so we got some negatives that we have to deal with, but for now, let's just try to find the two numbers. Okay, 1 and 36. So hopefully getting to the point where you can just kind of sit there in your head and think of all the factors and then grab the two that will work. Okay, but again, everyone learns differently. So if you need to write them all down, do that. Okay. So I'm going to keep going here. 2 and 18. I cannot tweak those, add or subtract them to make 9. Nope. 3 and 12. Okay, what do you think? 3 and 12? If I add them, I'll get 15, but if I subtract them, I'll get 9. Oh, here's our combination. Okay, so now we just got to figure out the sign. So since it's a negative 36, one of these has to be negative. So here are the two possibilities. 3 is negative or 12 is negative. Okay, which one of these will get us to negative 9? Well, the 3 plus negative 12 combination will. Okay, so that's how we're going to decompose the middle term. So x squared plus 3. Okay, so now remember we have a couple letters involved here. So instead of just writing x, you're going to write xy. Okay, and then we're going to factor by grouping here. So take the first pair. All right, they can both divide at an x. Second pair. All right, negative, watch out, got a negative here, so negative has to come out. And a 12 can be divided into both with a y. Okay, so now factor them out. Make sure, remember the y when you factor out the factor there. And so negative, negative makes positive. The y's are gone, so that leaves me an x. Negative, negative is positive. 36 divided by 12 is 3. And y squared divided by y is y. Okay, so there's a common factor there that you can also factor out one more step here. Take that out, and then that leaves an x minus 12y. Okay, so again, if you're a little bit shaky with these ones with two letters, just go do an aside over here and check your work. Make sure, like, FOIL it back in, multiply it back in, and you'll find that, yeah, it goes back to there. Okay, so what you're noticing here, like if we look above here, whenever we got factors, it was 2x plus 1 and then a 2x minus 5. But the second one never had a letter, okay? Because it was always just, just the x squared x. But when you find you have a couple of letters, like an x squared and a y squared, and then the middle one has the combination of both, you know that the factor will look like this, where you'll have the first letter that you see x, right? And then the second one has to have a letter as well. Okay, so that's a good way to make sure you're on the right track. All right, okay, so keep going here. We got a few like that in our practice here with lots of letters, but then we'll get to these ones where now it's cubed and so forth. So what do we do then? Okay. All right, let's move to E. Okay, so again, GCF, check for that. Okay, I don't see a number that would work. I don't see letters. Nope, so we're good. All right, find the sum. Okay, -5 and the product, -50. Okay, and again, hopefully you've thought of some numbers off the top of your head. Okay, if not, just list them all out. You'll get yourself there. Okay, 1 and 2, or 1 and 50. Nope, does that make 5? Nope. 2 and 25. 2 and 25. Okay, no. 3 doesn't divide in. 4 doesn't divide in. 5 divides in. Okay, 5 and 10. Okay, could I add or subtract those and make a 5? Yes. Okay, so we know we've hit the two numbers. Now we got to figure out the sign because we have it multiplied to -50. So again, when you have to get to a negative number, one of them is negative. So you got to decide which one. Give myself a bit more space here. Okay, so so either the negative or the 5 is negative or the 10 is negative. Okay, which one? Well, we need a negative 5, so the bigger one here has to be negative. Okay, to make negative 5. All right, so let's decompose. Okay, so write this over here. Okay, so let's decompose the middle term. So we have m squared 5mn, and then we have negative 10mn minus the 50n squared. Okay, all right, so from there, we decompose the middle term, so now we're just factor by grouping here. Okay, so m, they both have an m in common, and these two, okay, watch out, there's a negative here, negative, they can both divide out of 10, and also an n. Okay, so from there, factor out the m, and so you're going to divide here. What do I have to my arrow here? There it is. Oh, it disappears. Okay. Anyway, I'll figure it out. So m squared and m becomes just the m plus 5n bracket. Okay, then the negative 10n comes out. And then m plus 5n. Okay, we're looking good. We got the same factor. All right, take the same factor out. They both have 5 or m plus 5n in common, and that leaves the m and 10n left. Okay, and you've got your factored answer. On to F. So again, can you think of a couple factors that would work here where we'll multiply to 36 and add to negative 12? Okay, so you know what? I'm going to try the guess and check method here. Okay, so right now I know that W here W here is 1. So the only numbers that, so if I have A here, if I think about, like, this is just me thinking in my head, A is equal to 1. The only numbers that make 1 is 1 times 1. So the only numbers that would be in front of the letter is 1. Okay, so I've got that part set. Now I have to think of what numbers multiply to make 36, which is the C value. So C is 36. So again, just thinking in your head. So we feel a little bit tricky here, okay? So it's in a way you're doing product sum in your head. There's lots of different numbers that make 36. Okay, so this is why if you're not comfortable thinking of all the factors in your head, you need to write them down, then that's fine. Go ahead and do that, okay? But I'm thinking what makes 12 that would make 36 when you multiplied them? So hopefully you thought right away 6 and 6 would work, okay? But if not, just kind of run through all the factors here and go, oh, there it is, 6 and 6. So if I just put 6 and 6 right here, what will you get? Well, if you, okay, so again, in your head, you're like, okay, first, okay, is W squared outer, 6W inner, 6W, okay? So you're on the right track here. You just got to figure out the signs now. So again, just kind of maybe make them both negative and see if that works. Yep, that will work. Okay, so that's your final answer. So again, this work step, I guess you should be doing it over here, like in your head. Okay, W squared, 6W, 6W, and 36. Yeah, that works. Okay, so I need to make both of these negative in order to get a positive 36. All right, and then this one here ended up with the same factors. So you can write it W minus 6 squared. Okay, so move on to the next ones here. So G. Okay. So again, it's looking a bit different. We're not used to seeing a cube. Okay, x cubed. But again, what are the steps, which I forgot to do here? So here I would have gone, what's my first step? GCF? Oh, 1, right? Okay, so that's the first step you always have to do. All right, GCF. Okay, so you might be panicking right now. Oh, this is a new looking question. We never have cube. Okay, but greatest common factor. Do they have a number in common? No. Do they have a letter in common? Yes. They all have an X that can divide out. Okay, so if some of these questions look a bit strange, it might just be that step where you take the greatest common factor out, and then you're going to find that it looks just like the other questions that you're comfortable with. Okay, so we took the X out, so now it's just x squared minus 14x plus 45. And this part here looks like what we've been factoring, okay? But before it was intimidating, it had an x cubed. We don't do that. We haven't seen ones like that, so it was an issue. Next year you will do cubes and quartics and stuff like that, but this year we just stay with the x squared, okay, quadratics. All right, so we're not finished here. So some people, once they kind of factor a little bit, they're like, oh, I'm done. I can move on to the next question because I did something. But no, you want to always check. Okay, so once you factored out, check what was left behind here and see if you can actually factor this out. And yes, well, it's possible. So you have to go and do your little product sum check, or you can do guess and check here. So like what times what makes 45, but would add to make 14. Hopefully you can think of the numbers right away. So then go ahead and do guess and check. But we are going to just do the product sum here. Okay, one thing I'm noting here is that see how with the quadratic inside the brackets, it is an a equals 1. So we could use a trick method here. Okay. All right, so, all right, what makes 45? Okay, so you can go through all the factors, 1 and 45. No, that's not going to make 14. 3 and 15 makes 45, but not 14. And then that gets us to 5 and 9. Okay, will 5 plus 9 make 14? Yes. So, oh, right, but there's an issue here. We need negative 14. So what can we do here? Positive 5 and 9 will not make negative 14, but the other possibility, or if you make them both negative, that'll work. Okay, all right, so let's go through here and factor these out. And you know what? If you, again, have been using that trick method right here, and I'm just going to use it here because you guys should know how to factor this by decomposition or area model and so forth. If you look there, you're going to find that you can just go right to this method here. So you know the two factors. This is the simple trinomial, so you can just go right to this answer, okay, instead of doing the decomposition step or the area model and so forth. Okay, but again, in order to get full marks, you need to make sure this this factor that you took out at the beginning is still here in the final answer, and then the two terms that you found from the product sum are here as well. So this would be out of 3, like I would look for these all being perfect. Okay, all right, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so again, always step 1, check for the greatest common factor. Okay, it can cause a lot of grief, and you're going through trying to factor it, it's not working, and then you're like, Miss Perry said there's only 2 that won't be, or, you know, at the most 2 that can't work, and you know we've already used those cards up here, so it can get frustrating why it's not working, but it could be just because you forgot this first step, okay, taking the greatest common factor. So again, if you take a look here, we have 2, we have 6 and 36. They do have a number in common, a 2, okay? All right, any letters? No. All right, so let's take out the 2 first. Okay, and we'll divide those out. A squared, 3a, and 18. Okay, so there we go. And then again, don't just stop because you're like, oh, I'm done. I factored it. Nope. Check now that, make sure this trinomial in here, this quadratic that now has appeared, to see if it can be factored. Okay. All right. Because, and then like if you can factor it out. But if at this point it can't be factored, then you can say cannot be factored further. Okay. But you still needed to factor out the 2 here and then write your answer like this. Okay. If you just wrote right at the beginning without writing any work, cannot be factored, you won't get the mark for it. But if you get to here and say if it can't be factored, then you can write that cannot be factored further. Okay. All right, but let's see this one here. We have a sum of 3 and we have a product of negative 18. Okay, so what 2 numbers work? Again, hopefully you thought of them already. 1 and 18 didn't work, but always think of those because sometimes that is the pair that you need and people always skip this one and then sometimes, yeah, they're stuck for a bit because they forgot to check that one. 2 and 9, no. 3 and 6, yes. Okay, so if I add them, it's 9, but if I subtract them, yes, I can get to 3. So again, we just got to tweak the signs. Since the product is negative 18, one of these has to be negative. Okay, so if you wanted to go a little bit faster here, you can always think, well, if I have a positive, number here, the bigger number of the pair has to be positive. If I have a negative, if I have a positive here, the bigger of the pair has to be positive. But if I have a negative number to add up to, the bigger number has to be negative. Okay, so I don't need this last one. I need this one here. Okay, all right, so those are the 2. And then use your trick method. This is in here. This is a simple trinomial. So I can go right to my answer because I just found them in the product sum table. So I found that a negative 3 and a plus 6 are the factors, plus this on top of it, this 2. Okay, so we got a lot more. So if you are looking at some specific ones and you want to skip to them, you can do that. Okay, I just want to go over all of them. I was getting a lot of questions and people weren't feeling as confident with this stuff because it is tricky. It is tricky. Okay. All right. Just give myself a bit more space here. All right. So step 1, what do? GCF. Okay. All right. A 2 could work here. Anything else? Well, do they all have an M? Yes, they do. So at the most, they can all divide out a M. All right, let's do that. And then write what's left. Okay, all right, and always go through and make sure that you can, that you attempt to try to factor these. So I'm going to use my guess and check method again. So again, I know that this has to factor into a couple factors like this. I know that the m, so see how this is a simple trinomial, so it's m squared. It's the only 2 numbers that would make m squared. Like the number here, 1 is 1, right? So 1 and 1. So m times m makes m squared. Okay, so now we're going to figure out the last 2 numbers. So we're going to look at the c value here, 45. All right, so in your head really quickly, what times what could that makes 45 would add to make 14. So right away, I'm thinking 9 and 5. Okay, and then I have conditions that it has to be positive when they multiply, and then when they add up, it has to be positive. So if everything's positive, okay, you can put plus in for both, and then check. M times m is m squared. M times M times 5 is 5m, n times m is 9m. Add those up, 14, and then 9 times 5, 45. Okay, so there you are. Okay, so on to J. Again, check for greatest common factor. Okay, scanning through, nothing works. Okay, so let's move on to the product sum. Okay, so we have a sum of 40 and a product of 400. Okay, so a really big number here. So I want you to start, instead of listing them all off, can I jump to some bigger numbers and go through and find some factors that will work. Okay, so you're just thinking 40, okay, it has to add to 40, but what multiplies to make 400? So hopefully you can brainstorm to 20 times 20. Okay, and again, we need a negative 40 here, but a positive 400. So we'll make them both negative here. Okay, all right, so let's go through, decompose the middle term. And factor by grouping. Okay, watch out, there's a negative. Okay, take out the common factor 5x, leaving behind a 5x. 4, take out the negative 4. Okay, the pen's getting a bit glitchy here. 5x. There we go, we're almost done. So they both have, okay, so we have this one in common, and that left a 5x minus 4 as well, which is the same. So we can rewrite it. Curly bracket here. Okay, and then we can write it simplified. Since they're both the same, we can make it all squared. On to K. These ones look slightly different. What's happening here is that it's missing the middle term. All right, here we go. All right, so you are used to the trinomial form of your AX, your BX, and then your C term. So right now we are missing the middle term, the B. Okay, so you have the x squared, you have the constant, but you don't have the B term. All right, so are we going to approach this any different though? No. What you're going to do still is look for the GCF. Okay, only a 1 will work. And you're still going to do the sum product. Okay, so we know the product is -1, but what's the sum if the B is missing? So if the B is missing, it's not there, that means it would have summed up to 0, and we don't write things in when they're 0. So that's your goal. You need to find the product of -1, but you need to find the sum of 0. So what numbers work to make 1? Well, only 1 times 1 works. Okay, so if I add or subtract them, if I subtract them, I'll get 0. So I know I have the right numbers. I just need to figure out the sign. So since they're the same number, well, one of them's positive, one of them's negative. And if I take a -1 and add it to a +1, yes, I'll get a 0. so those are my two numbers, and on top of it, you could use the trig method here if you want. This is a simple trinomial, so you could say, oh, well, x squared minus 1 is x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay, or it's okay to write it this way as well. Still the same. Okay, all right, so that's why don't panic just because the b is missing. It just means that you just have to sum to 0, and then the product is still the -1 here. Okay, all right, so let's try another one here. I'll use decomposition, I guess, on this one. Okay, so you can see it the long way if you don't like the trig method. Greatest common factor, 1. The sum, okay, so again, we know the middle one's missing, so it's 0. And the product of the c term, or the a times c, I guess, is -64. All right, what two numbers will work here? Okay, so you can go through all the factors, but like you saw here with this one here, then it had to be the same number, right? And then you just put the opposite sign. That's how we get it to 0. So what number multiplies to make 64? That's the same. Okay, so really you could just square root it. Okay, so hopefully you thought of 8 and 8. Okay, all right, 8 times 8 does make 64, but if they subtract, they will make 0. So we know if we have the right numbers, but one of them has to have a negative sign, and the other one has to have a positive sign. Okay, all right, so we'll use decomposition method here. So I know that we don't have a b term, but we are going to just write the x, yeah, so we're just going to write both the terms that we found in our product sum table. Okay, so because the -8 and the +8 together will make a sum of 0. So that's what we want to see here. And then we can go through the steps of finding a common or factor by grouping. Okay, both of those have an x that works. Both of these are an 8. Oops, and then fly away with your decomposition method here. Okay, so again, remember this is an a equals 1, simple quadratic. Okay, so you could use the trig method here, but we're just going to go through decomposition here. So we have, sorry, right, the x comes out, and then the x minus 8, and then the 8 comes out, and that leaves an x minus 8, and then our final answer is, and then pay attention, they do have opposite signs, okay? So don't, I don't know, start writing it the same. Okay, they are different, so you have to make sure those signs are different. All right, so again, slightly different looking question, but you could still throw what you were throwing at the other ones, and it's okay. All right, so okay, we're almost there. We're getting to some more complex ones, but if you are following the steps of finding the GCF, then doing the product sum, and then trying to do decomposition or using some of the trig methods, you are getting better and better at these. So just practice these lots, be able to tackle any question that you see. Okay, so on to M. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. All right, so I'll leave it there. On to M here. Okay, what happens if I enter here? Oh, of course. Okay, so I don't know what. Okay, we'll squeeze it in here. Okay, so moving on to some tougher ones now. So we have M here, which has 81x to the 4 and 25 y squared. So quite different from what we've been looking at, but just a nice challenging one. So what we're looking at here is, I know it's y to the 4, but I want you to think of it as still being or it's x to the 4, but think of it as still being like x squared, okay? So we're going to still tackle this the same way we've been tackling these questions so far. So step 1, start with the GCF. Okay, so oops, we're going to start with, sorry, all right, so the GCF is 1, okay, so no letters, no numbers, just the one that will work here. Okay, so then from there, because there's only a couple terms here, so again, there's the first term, like an x squared, and then think of this one as just being the constant. The middle term is missing, so you have to sum to 0. Okay, and then the product here is A and C together, so you have to take 81 times 25, which is, again, really massive number, but you know that with the product sum, and then on top of it has to be negative, with the product sum, when the sum is 0, you know, it just has to be, you just take this number and square root it. Okay, so 45 times 45 will make this value here. Okay. All right, so let's go and do that here. So we have 81 to the 4th power. Okay, so here are 2 terms now. Okay, so what letters do we write here? Okay, so I just want to go and show you one above here. Like one of the first ones we started with that had a couple letters. So the middle term had both W and Y in it. So think of it like you're square rooting this one. So if you square root this, you get W. If you square root this one, you get Y. So the one we're doing right now, sorry, right there, if you square root this x to the 4, it's like having an x squared now. And if you square root the y squared, you get y. Okay, so those are the letters that you need for that middle term when you're decomposing it. But I get that we can't see the middle term because it's a 0, and so we're using this product sum values here. Okay, so from there, now we are going to factor by grouping. Okay, so 81 and 45 have a 9 in common, and both have an x squared that they can give up. So again, these are a lot more challenging than what I'll assess you on tests and so forth, but just again, if you just need a bit more of a challenge, these are the good ones to try. So again, we have a negative here, so I know I need some sort of negative value divided out, and I'm thinking here what numbers work. So we have a 5, and any letters, yes, a y can come out as well. All right, so from there, so we have our common factor there. So if we divide these out, that will become a 9, x squared, and then a 5, just a 5, oops, y. Okay, and then negative 5y comes out here, and that leaves negative, negative. Okay, it becomes a positive. 45 divided by 5 is 9. The y's will disappear and x squared will be left. And then here we have a positive 5 left and just 1y. Okay, so got through a tough one here, but look, we got the same factors. We know we're on the right track. All right, so we'll take that factor out, and that leaves us with that factor there. Okay, all right, so nice tough one, but now that you've seen this one, hopefully you can tackle another similar one to that one. Okay, let's move on. Again, these last 4 are really challenging. I won't put them on any assessments. You might see some next year though. Okay, so on to N here. So we're going to look for the greatest common factor here. Okay, and so we're analyzing the question here, and so there's something new here. We have a negative sign. We haven't seen a negative sign on A for any of the examples that we've done. So it's kind of like, when we did them here. For this one here, the second pair of numbers that we had to factor out. See how the first one is negative, so we had to divide out a negative. And the whole point of that is that we don't want the first term in these brackets here to be negative. So we have to divide out the negative if the first one is negative. So here it wasn't negative, so we just went through and divided by positive 9. Here it was a negative 45, so that's why we divided by a negative number, negative 5 here, okay? So in this case here, same thing, we just got to get rid of that negative. So I know I got to divide a negative out, and then 18 and 32, so 2, okay? Greatest common factor there, and then with the letters they can both divide out an x squared. Okay, so that negative is important. All right, so go through, divide these out. Okay, and then I want you to write 2x squared, and then so negative 18 divided by negative 2 is 9. Oops, I forgot to write the square here. And therefore here. Okay, so sorry. So the negative 2x squared is divided out, so that leaves us a positive 9x squared. Okay, and then negative 32 divided by negative 2 is negative 6, and then the x squareds cancel out. Okay, so all right, so from there, always check to see if the value in here can be factored as well. So I'm just going to do a sum product table here. So we need a sum, so see how the middle one is missing again, so because normally it would be the x term in here, and the product, okay, so remember it's always a times c, so this is c right here. Okay, so again, reminder, like you have an a here and a c here. Okay, so the b is missing. All right, so 9 times 16 is 144. So try to, make sure, remember that. I keep forgetting myself. So, all right, so we know that when it adds up to a 0 in the middle, we're just square rooting this number here. Oh, and sorry, adds up to a negative 144. So we know we need to have 12 and its opposite, negative 12. Okay, so those are the numbers we're going to use to decompose this. Use square brackets here to contain this here. So we're going to go 9x squared. Okay, so positive 12x, negative 12x, and negative 16. All right, and then now we're going to factor by grouping. All right, so the first two here, they both have a 3 in common and an x in common. And the next one, they have, okay, on top of it, look, negative, so negative. And let's see here, 4. Okay, so now we are writing out 9 divided by 3 is 3. Oops, I forgot to write there. Bracket, so it's 3, and that leaves an x, and then the next one leaves a 4. Okay, then we take out a 4 here, and then negative negative makes positive 3x. Negative negative here, positive 4. All right, and last step, let's keep factoring in here. Still keep writing this negative 2x squared out here. All right, so we have this factor in common, so let's write it out here. All right, so whenever it's a binomial, put a bracket. When monomial, you don't need a bracket. And then that leaves this one and this one left. There we go. Okay, and then we can drop the square brackets as well. All right, so another tricky one, but another little part that you learned with the negative here. So it's important to try all the questions. Okay, All right, keep going. We're almost done all the tough ones here. Okay, but yeah, just keep following the steps. All right, so greatest common factor. Okay, brainstorm. Okay, a 4 can come out of all those numbers. 4, 44, and 72. Okay, can a letter come out of all of those? I don't see enough X's, but I do see Y's that can come out. Okay, all right. So again, if you don't do this step with the GCF first, it can, just give you a lot of grief. So you'll be sitting there trying to factor it and it's not working. Okay, and it's usually due to the not taking out the greatest common factor. Okay, all right, so take that out, put it out here. I'm just going to put it in square brackets right away, the rest of the stuff here. So 4 and 4 is gone, y and y is gone. That leaves an x squared. The next one is 44 divided by 4 is 11. The y's are gone, leaves an x. 72 divided by 4 is 18. And then the y is gone. Okay, so from there, we will have, we're not going to stop there. We're going to check to see if we can factor in the brackets here. So let's try. All right, so a sum of -11 and a product of 18. Okay, so if you're tackling these harder ones now at the end, hopefully you're at the point where you can guess and check or come up with the factors pretty quick. So you're thinking all the numbers that multiply to 18, which ones will add to 11? So hopefully you came up with these two, 2 and 9. Okay, but we have issues with the negative sign here, so we have to tweak it. So here it has to be positive 18, so positive 2, positive 9 will make positive 18, but it will not add to negative 11. So the other possibility is to make them both negative, and that will work for the -11. Okay, and at this point, you guys know the trig method. So if you look here, once we factored it, it is an a equals 1 trinomial, or a simple trinomial. So go ahead and use that trick. That means x minus 2 and x minus 9. So you just skip the whole decomposition step, the area model step, and get to there. All right, okay, so you're all done. It's all factored. Okay, so again, if you only go this far, I'll give you 1 mark. If you can get all the way through and fully factor it, you get the 3 marks. Okay, so just keep working on factoring as far as you can. All right, next one. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms here. Okay, so what did we do in the past when we saw that? We factored by grouping. So we're going to take these ones here and think about what number can I divide out of both. Greatest number, so 6 works, and they both have an A. Okay, all right, let's double check the other one now. So we have a -15c and a +10. So again, we have a negative, so we have to put a negative out, and a 5 would work here. Okay, so there, factor away. Okay, so we have 6a comes out. So that leaves a 3c. And a -5 comes out. That leaves a 3c minus 2. Okay, so I guess it's not that tricky. You've seen one of these before, because I just threw it in. See if you can still do these types of questions, even though you've learned a lot of new stuff since then. Okay, so that comes out, and that one's left, and then that's fully factored. Okay, on to the last two now. So right away, Q here has 4 terms, so treat it like one of those factor by grouping type questions. Okay, so look at the first two. What do they have in common? All right, so we have an x squared and a y. All right, and the other one is we got a y cubed. Oh, and then on top of it, watch out, there's negative here. Don't forget. So negative y cubed. All right, and let's go through and factor these out. So x squared y, that leaves us with an x cubed and just a y. Okay, and then the next one is a negative y cubed. That leaves us with just x cubed. Here it's positive y squared. Okay, and then I'm noticing they're not the same, so I'm going back and double checking my work here. I forgot to put this 2 here. Okay, so we're good. Same value coming out. So here's this factor here that they had both had in common. And then what's left? Right there. The x squared y minus y cubed. Okay, and again, it was all letters. Still, you're following the same steps. You're factoring by grouping if it's got 4. If it's got 3 terms, use the the GCF and try to use a product sum or guess and check and so forth. Okay. All right. So last one, the last one here. So greatest common factor. Okay. So it looks like just 1. All right. So let's find the sum of negative 13 and the product of 36. Okay, so brainstorm. Hopefully you can think of the 2 numbers right away, these 2. All right, and so these 2 would multiply nicely to make 36, but they will not add to make negative 13. So the other possibility, make both of them negative. That will work. So let's go through here. So we have z to the 4, z squared. So again, how did they get the z squared? They're just square rooting this, right? Chop that and make it 2. And so now let's decompose. Oops. Okay, both negative and a positive 36. Okay. And again, if you're at the point where you can guess and check these, do that as well. Okay, so oops, I forgot to write squares on those. Okay, so z squared, and here again it's a negative 9, and then you're thinking common factor 9 for both, negative 9, and hopefully you're flying at this point, okay? Up here. Okay, so that one's z squared 4, negative 9, z squared 4. Okay, oops. Needing a bit more space here. Make some space right now. The reason why is that usually we're done at this point, but I'm noticing we're going to have to keep going here. So anyway, we'll just keep going. We'll take this out, and then we are left with that. Okay, and then we have a scenario here. We have to factor both of these now as well. Okay, so you're thinking, really? So this is the worst case scenario. You factored it, and yes, you have to factor it again. And on top of it, you have to factor each of these, both of them. So anyway, I'm going to just save you the time here. Or actually, here, I'll just do it right beside here on this other question. So for this one here, right, so we have GCF is 1. And then we have the sum is 0, and the product is -4. Okay, so again, we know what to do there. We just square root. And you know what? On top of it, okay, so you just square root it. You know you need a +2 and a -2. And we know that this is a equals 1 type quadratic. So we can just jump right to the factored answer of +2 and z subtract 2. Okay? All right, so let's look at z squared minus 9. So same thing. What times what makes 9? 3. Okay, so you know the numbers here will be 3 and -3. All right, there we go. And then we write all of these out. So there's 4 factors. Okay, so, and again, I know you're used to 2 factors, like go right back to those basic ones that we had. So like if you take a look here, so see how it was x squared here, x squared. So that's why we had 2 factors, okay? If you have the one we just did, see how it's to the power of 4, so that's why there's 4 factors here. Okay, and that's something you're going to do a lot next year. So for now, just here's kind of a taste of a bit of grade 11 stuff, but I just wanted to challenge you. But for now, if you can, you know, work on like, so from O onwards, those were the challenging ones, but you should be able to do A all the way to N, okay, this year with confidence. All right, so try the checkpoint now. You should be awesome at these if you went through all of these.